there, my name is Belinda Flaherty. I run M.E.D.I.A. I'm a property investment coach, and I'm on the quest. I want to create, work with Australians to become financially free. And really, my biggest goal is I strongly believe that everyone in Australia has the opportunity for financial freedom. It's just one step away.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, the number one place where we unpack the real stories, strategies, and solutions that help you not only just create success in business, but also prosperity in life. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and I've got a question. Have you ever wondered why some people manage to retire early and, well, maybe the rest of us are sitting there just Googling what is compounding interest? And I think today's guest has got all the answers. We're joined today by Belinda Flaherty. Now, Belinda, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm excited.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. I was telling you a little bit earlier on that I'm a little bit starstruck. I mean, you've worked with some of the greats and you've done some of the biggest things, like win competitions in ads. And I've tried to work all my life just to put an ad in front of, people to click, but it didn't work out like that. So I can't wait to hear your...
Absolutely. Happy to share it with your fine folks out there. Absolutely.
Great.
100%.
Great stuff. Now, for those that are just joining us, Belinda is the director of M.E.D.I.A, who has helped over 700 everyday Australians retire in the last 10 years. And that's just not impressive. She's actually, I think that's superhero level impact, because a lot of us are working in jobs that sometimes we're not even happy to go to every single day, let alone we then end up retiring on very little or just maybe some sort of government pension. So if somebody can actually help people do and have a happier existence, especially in the retirement age, that is a person that I would definitely be paying attention to. So Belinda actually started her journey in national sales and events, and she was leading teams, working with CEOs. But life threw curveballs that actually reshaped her mission. And we're going to be hearing all about those, from a personal loss to actually going ahead and raising over $350,000 for children's charities. She actually took her grit and a passion and turned it into a mission, which is helping Australians build financial freedom through property. And she actually won the best commercial in the world. And I think that's a feat to be reckoned with. And so if she can actually sell an ad to a global audience, imagine what she can actually do to help you sell yourself to the idea of financial freedom. I'll just let her start talking now, because things that I'm saying, I'm not even qualified to be talking about. All right. So Belinda, take us back. I mean, before property strategy and before M.E.D.I.A, what was life like in national sales and events?
Okay, so I was working I was still at uni. I was working promo, working for a modeling agency. I was doing theatre and acting, and I realized there was a real niche in regards to promo events. And I actually I met a gentleman who became like a bit of like a mentor to me, and he was in sales training and mostly in the motor industry. And I thought, wow, the motor industry, I've never really thought of that. And he said, Belinda, you'd be great for it. And so I started doing some open days and events for Toyota. And my biggest claim to fame was actually CMI Toyota, which anyone out there who's Adelaidean, they'll know CMI. It's a big Toyota dealership on West Terrace. And I ended up running an event there, and we ended up doing like 137 cars in a day and a half. So you could imagine in a day and a half, I mean, this is going back nearly 20 plus years ago. They were lucky to do maybe 70 to 80 in a month. So what happened was that got logged in, and that got every Toyota dealership in Australia saw those stats, and it went like grass fire. And before you knew it, I was getting flown to Melbourne by Toyota, landing in lovely Port Melbourne, where the regional head office is for Toyota, sitting in front of a big table of suits, all these gentlemen in suits around a big, oval corporate table going, "Belinda, how did you do it? We want to know." And I went, "Well, if I tell you, I'd have to kill you." So they said, "Well, Belinda, we're going to give you a shot." So they ended up booking me for all the big Toyota dealerships. So if anyone's familiar with Melbourne, Frankston Toyota, Brighton Toyota, Warragul Toyota, Coburg, and then I started spreading out to Ballarat, Bendigo, Mornington. So, and then obviously from there, that took me all around Australia. So Sydney, Queensland, Darwin. I'd be in one weekend, I'd be in Launceston Toyota one day, which is in Tasmania, and then I'd be in Western Australia the following week. So great frequent flyer points, I can tell you that right now. But also I was very much involved in the corporate, and that was great. But the challenge is I was running my own business, and anyone that's out there as an entrepreneurial business, that, cash flow is really important. And sometimes with corporate, they don't always pay their bills on time, but, you're sitting there, living check to check, and you've got teams and staff and air flights and accommodation. So, it was always on top of it, which was great. But I just felt like I was always chasing my tail. And also, the more money that I made in my business, the more money the tax department took away. So I was actually looking for ways where I could actually start minimizing my tax. And that was my big aha moment in regards to property. And a famous property investor, which anyone out there is familiar with, Mr. Robert Kiyosaki. Now, he wrote the famous book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And if you're involved in property investing, if you haven't read that book, you need to get out from underneath the rocks, because that is obviously your first book you should always read. I think they should make it into a children's book. Seriously, like, it is amazing. And that was my absolutely aha moment. I read that book probably 20 plus years ago, but I didn't have the money to do anything. But it just kept rolling around each time. Passive income, minimizing your tax. But I still didn't know how to do it in Australia. So I looked for mentors. I looked for mentors with real life results. And one of them was a gentleman called George Markowski, who I ended up working with for nearly 13 years, but also got to meet people like Richard Branson, Arnold Schwarzenegger. If you go onto my website, you'll see all the famous people, even John Howard, our previous Prime Minister. All of these people have one thing in common. They all do property on the side. Most famous people are doing something to do with property. And I thought, wow, is this just for the rich, famous people, or can it be for the everyday, Australian? And the answer was absolutely. But you need to learn about it. So I always say, and you can see it on my website, financial freedom should be for everyone, not just the wealthy.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for taking us on that journey. That's the reason why I was saying I'm shaking in my boots, because I'm a little bit starstruck. The people that I've seen you around and amongst, I was just like, wow, it rubs off.
I tell you, I was starstruck. Correct. I was starstruck when I met Arnold Schwarzenegger. And when I asked him about property, he said property was actually his claim to fame, not Hollywood. Because when he came to Hollywood, he bought all these properties, and he did them all up so he could actually create rent. So then he wasn't desperate for money, and he could choose the roles that he went for. Property is his claim to fame, not Hollywood.
Absolutely. I like that. I like that a lot. Now, obviously, and thank you so much for giving us that tidbit of insight. Now, you were working in a very male-dominated environment, and as you mentioned, it was suits all over the place and things of that nature. Was that difficult for you to actually stand out or make a name for yourself? Because I find a lot of people, especially women, when they are in spaces like that, they usually just end up just, dealing with the status quo.
Correct. Look, it takes a very special type of character. I suppose my background was, as a kid, I was a bit of a tomboy. I kind of hung out with the boys. My background, I've been spearfishing, free diving, and diving for years since I was a kid. So, I was always out there kind of testing the elements. So, as far as I was concerned, being in a car dealership surrounded by guys, I just said, this is an opportunity, right? And there wasn't very many females when I started 25 years ago, but I can tell you now the women are very much involved. And I became a sales trainer, and I was actually training salespeople, and women that were coming through were doing better than the guys. So it's definitely, the industry's very much changed now. I mean, when I started, there was, I think, one female dealer principal in Australia. Now there's, there's more than half a dozen. So, there was one. So, it's definitely changing, and, women are coming through because, yeah, we're amazing.
Great stuff. Now, with all of this, you did allude to the fact that you were learning from mentors, you were putting some of that stuff to practice, but it was not possible because you didn't have the money for it. Is it something that was just a Belinda problem, or is it something that is being faced by quite a lot of people,
Look,
in
absolutely.
their lives?
Yeah, correct. Great question. So the biggest challenge a lot of people think is they don't have money to get started. And so one of the things I needed to do was save my butt off, get that first deposit. However, I already had a unit. So I had a lovely little apartment in Adelaide. It was my first family home. And the hardest thing I could ever say, and anyone's out there, getting your first deposit for a property is always the hardest, but it's also the most rewarding, because the reality was I put money away, I saved, and you do anything. I had 5 jobs at one stage. Who cares? It's not going to be 5 jobs forever, right? I did whatever I could. I never watched TV. People go, oh, did you see this movie? Never saw it. Didn't have time for the cinemas, working. But I had a goal, and I knew that it wasn't going to be forever. So the reality was I worked really hard on that goal to get that first deposit. And we're talking, probably my first property was when I was about 25. So that was about 60,000, probably 50, 60 grand back then, which is probably the equivalent of about 120 today.
Wow.
With inflation. So that 60 grand got me my first little property, which I lived in. That was my first little apartment in lovely little Grange in South Australia, right near the beach. And I renovated it, and I lived in that property. And then when I moved to Melbourne, I rented that out. And then I still thought, right, I'm renting this out, and it was positively geared, but it also had equity in it. So equity is, so for instance, let's say the property was worth, say 400, but I owed the banks 200. That means I've got 200,000 of lazy equity sitting there doing absolutely nothing. So that's my opportunity to pull out a bit of my equity and put a deposit down. And back then, my first property, I pulled out about 80 grand. So that was my first property.
Fantastic. Let's just go back to what you just mentioned there, because so many people, if they do manage to at least, squirrel some sort of a deposit, they want to go for their dream house. But in your instance, you went on and picked up a well-to-do property that you did say you had to renovate. What's the mindset around that? Because so many people would just want to nail it and then make sure that whatever they're building is their forever home, or the first house that they pick up. Yeah.
The forever home, I mean, if you're talking your first property, the reality is what I wanted as my first home was probably a $3-4 million house on the beach. ain't going to happen. Right. So what we've got to do is do baby steps. So I started with a small apartment that was in my means, knowing that I was not going to be emotionally attached to that property. It was only going to be a stepping stone. That was my stepping stone to get my foot into the market, because I knew it was a good area. I got it for a good price. I was going to renovate it, and that property I knew within a year was going to go up in value. So I always knew never get attached to it. If I need to sell it tomorrow, I have to sell it. But the reality was I still own that property, right? It's one of my first investments. I still own that. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I paid about $100 for it. It just got valued. It's around $680,000 today. And it was a small little unit, 2-bedroom unit near the beach.
Wow.
And it rents out for about $650 a week. So it's highly positive geared, and I own it outright.
That's just money coming into your pocket, come whether you wake up today or you decide
Correct.
You want to take a day off.
Correct. Absolutely. So that was my first investment, and that was my first step to obviously buy another investment property.
Great stuff. Now, before we go into obviously during the second property, what were some of the lessons that you came into, especially because so many people don't go past, and it is a statistic that says so many people don't go past the first property or the second property, but
Correct.
You are now about to tell us about getting into your first property. What were
Correct.
some of the lessons that you yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Good lesson and great question. The first one was the fact that I should have bought new to start with, not an older property. Now, there's a reason. I knew I was going to hold on to that property. How much maintenance do you have in a brand new property for the first 5 to 7 years? Not much.
Yeah.
However, here in Australia, when you buy an investment property and you rent it out, you get a 10-year depreciation schedule, which means the government give you a tax depreciation schedule, which means on an average property between 500 to 600 today, you're looking anywhere from $13,000 up to $16,000 back on the first year. Now, what are you going to do with that money? We're not going to go out and spend it. We're going to reinvest that money back into the offset account that's connected to the loan. And guess what? We're going to get a check every year, kids. And guess what we're going to do with that money? Reinvest it. So not only am I getting rent, I'm also getting a tax deduction. And instead of running out and spending it, which a lot of people do, we had the discipline to reinvest that money to make that property turn positively geared, which means I'm now not paying for the property. Who's paying for it? The tenant and the tax department. Now, the money that I'm making out of it, even if it was $1 a week, what am I going to do with that money? Not spend it, reinvest it. So that's what we're doing. We're creating that first step towards rapid mortgage reduction, getting other people to pay for that property. That was my second property. So I learned a lot from the first property because I got 0 tax deductions. I might have got maybe $2,000 or $3,000 from the renovations, but I spent a lot of money on reno. But the second one, I've got a 10-year depreciation schedule, which, ladies and gentlemen, if you're sitting down, it's probably a good idea, but almost $80,000 of tax deductions on one property. So I got nothing on my first one.
So you mean to tell me the government actually wants to partner with you in order to be an investor? Because them giving you back that is like saying, tap on the shoulder, good on you.
Correct.
Using your money the right way.
100%, because as an investor, it's almost like a business. And as a business, you can depreciate. And I'll give you an example just to kind of, make it a little bit layman terms. If you're let's say you're a farmer and your business is farming your land, your tractor is going to be depreciating. It's going to go down, it's going to wear and tear. So when you've got an investment property, you've got a depreciation schedule. So that covers things like your door handles, your air conditioning, your taps, your toilets, your sinks, your bathrooms. And obviously over the years, it's going to depreciate because you're renting it out as an investment. So it's a lovely loophole. And a lot of people don't realize. And the beautiful thing is you've got 2 ways to get that money. You can wait all year, do a tax return and get that money back. Or you can play it even smarter and do an ITWV, which is called an income tax withhold variation, which means it's a rubber stamp. through an accountant. And what they can do is we can start getting that money back weekly, fortnightly, or monthly, which now it's pretty exciting because we're not having to wait all year to get that money. We're getting that cash flow each week or month. And now what are we going to do with the money? Same discipline, reinvest it.
But we're not going to that Toyota dealership, are we?
No cars at this stage. No, none of that stuff. We're going to keep away from the motor industry. No cars at this stage. We can get that stuff later once the property goes up in value. Then you can pull out 30 grand and go buy that new Toyota.
But Belinda,
probably only be a Corolla or something, but
don't forget these people were trained by the best, right? So you just walk past there's a wolf that just comes in, that new car smell, and they're like, come in here, we're waiting for you.
100%, absolutely. 100%, you got it. So look, there's learning from that. That was, so my first property, even though it was good, it wasn't the best decision. But the second property was a much better position because I was able to take advantage. Now, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, you can't get any tax deductions on a family home. It can only be for an investment property, and it needs to be new.
And I've heard the depreciation works on a 40-year schedule, right? So they will be taking it away.
Yeah.
Okay.
I always say, look, I say 10 years because after 10 years, there's not really much to play with after that. But it does go for 40 years. But your first, it's a depreciation schedule. If you're getting 15 grand in the first year, the second year might be 14, 12, 11, and then it will go 8, 9, 9, 9, or 7, 7. And then it will get slowly smaller and smaller and smaller. So if you buy a property that's over 10 years old, you're not going to get a lot of tax deduction. You buy a property today, you're going to get massive. You're going to get 80 grand over the next 10 years.
What I like about that is also, when it's the first sort of months or so of you just having acquired a property, there's quite a lot of handover, takeover. You need to be paying the bank while you find a tenant for it and things like that. And I think if you've got that, lined up, it can actually create that sort of buffer that is required. But this is not something that somebody just wakes up and already knows that it is possible, because otherwise everybody else will be doing it. No.
Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, we do not get taught this stuff in schools, and we're never going to get taught this stuff in schools. So
why though? They teach us, Yeah,
they don't really teach us tax. They don't teach us entrepreneurial. They don't teach us how to run your own business, all that kind of stuff. They just stick to the basic curriculum. Right. So, and that's unfortunate, but it's really up to us as individuals to find the right information. And look, these days you've got, there's so much information out there. There's no excuse, right? If you want to get involved in anything, whether it's property investing, whether it's, shares or Bitcoin, or it doesn't matter which medium you go down, you want to make sure you get informed and educated before you make any steps. That's the key.
You know what, Belinda? Just 2 days ago, I think it was the fun run at the school, and my kids were trying to get into my car with all their weird colors and paint, and I'm like, is that what they teach you at school? And you know what I mean? So now that you've just mentioned that,
one thing I know about school is they tell you, you should always do your own work and never copy the person next to you. But I can tell you, I followed Robert Kiyosaki. I learned from him. He was sharing his knowledge. And that's the thing. When you're around the right community, you want to be around people that are there to share all the things that are working for them. Because one thing I love about being a coach is what works for me and what I've seen, it can work for other people. And all I've got to do is set it up and show them and help them understand it. And they go, Belinda, this is amazing. I wish we were doing this years ago. If I got $1 for every client that I had that said, hey, we should have done this 5-10 years ago, I go, it doesn't matter. You're doing it now. That's all that matters.
Now, Belinda, I think you raised a very interesting topic there. Do you know how many people would say, oh, I should know that by now? Is it a construct of the school system that you should know the answer? And that's the reason why people don't actually apply themselves into wanting to learn, because they're afraid if they then ask, oh, I think this is a stupid question, then
Correct.
I should know, and then they just decide not to learn eventually.
Absolutely. Look, the biggest reason why a lot of people don't do what I'm teaching people is because it's total fear factor. And fear stands for false expectations appearing real, right? And that's and they also feel silly. And one thing I always say as a coach, there is no such thing as a silly question, not about anything. Because, I might ask a silly question about putting AdBlue in my car. Like, I don't know where that goes in a car. I've got a Range Rover. If any mechanics out there, they go, I know exactly where it goes. And I go, look, I don't know. Now I'm feeling like a dumb blonde. I should know this stuff. But that's not my wheelhouse. That's why I pay a mechanic, right? And that's the same as well. People, I think we kind of get brought up thinking that we should know all this stuff, and we don't. And I think I mentioned to you right from the beginning, just before we started, the whole idea of having a good coach, it doesn't matter if it's a coach for sport or it's a coach for, sport's a great example. If you want to be the best swimmer, you want a swimming coach, and even better, what about a swimming coach that's had gold medals? I mean, I'm going to go to that. That's the kind of coach that I want. And there's no such thing because, they're the experts. And, you're going there to ask all those questions because I promise everyone out there, if you ask all the right questions or even questions you didn't even think you knew, and then you start going down that rabbit hole, once you have all those answered, the questions answered, your confidence level goes through the roof.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, with all of this, you started us off, with your jet setting job with Toyota, and what a feeling. But what
a feeling, you got it.
But what was the actual turning point that made you say, I now want to take on this mission to help others also experience property the way I'm experiencing it?
Absolutely. So it would have been the fact that I was doing investing myself and I was loving it. So when you're enjoying something and you love it, it's very hard not to share your stories with friends and family. So obviously I was telling friends and family, wow, I've invested in this property. I'm getting tax deductions. So obviously the next step was, oh, Belinda, I want to do what you're doing. So cousins, friends, next door neighbors, people I'd met in school were kind of reaching out going, hey, you were talking about that property you bought, now you're buying another one, and you're also getting another one. Like, wow, I'd love to do what you're doing. And I go, great, let's book in for a coffee and let's work out a game plan. So the whole idea was I was doing that as a part-time thing just for the pure love of it. But then what happened was COVID hit. And when COVID hit, even though I was doing a bit of coaching part-time, my business of traveling around Australia was at a standstill. I mean, we were supposed to go into a lockdown for 2 weeks here in Melbourne, and it lasted almost 2 years. Right. So the reality was, it was my ex-business partner who was doing kind of a bit of a startup business, and he already was starting the company, but he said, Belinda, your talents are wasted. You've been coaching for years. You've done marketing, you've done sales coaching. You should be a property coach and you should do this full time and I should pay you. And I said, perfect. I'm happy with that. And I thought, well, I'll do it and see how I go. And when everything opens up again, I might go back to my old business. But I was having way too much fun as a coach. So I took it on board. So
no, Belinda, you would understand, and I'm glad you did mention this. At every Christmas table in any Australian household, there is always Auntie Sally sitting at the corner of the table who knows a thing or two about every property in that street, that area, that era.
Correct.
And everything else that might not be the right sort of information. Now, I can presume when you were talking to people, they might have been doubting you, or were they just not sure that things like that are possible? How did you then go on?
Absolutely. Look, if you go anywhere, if you start talking about your success, there's always going to be a few naysayers in the room. All right. I took that saying from Arnold Schwarzenegger, naysayers. So naysayers, negative Nancy pants. But look,
Mm,
they're not trying to be negative. What they're trying to do is protect you. So when I started getting my first investment, a lot of my family friends were like, Belinda, why are you doing that? The market's going to crash. What about if you don't get tenants? What about this? What about if you've got no money? What if this? What if this happens? And I just said, wow, that's some really good insights. Are you talking from experience? And the reality is, a lot of the time they were going, no, this is just what I heard.
yeah.
So what I just had to say was, look, I really appreciate you got my back. You're looking after me. I can see that you really care. So I was not taking that as a negative. I was actually taking that as they were trying to protect me. And then what I said was, look, I've got a really good coach at the moment, really helping me through, because I was obviously getting mentored myself when I first started.
Right.
And the reality was, I'm following those steps to keep myself really safe. I'll keep you informed. Funny enough, a couple of those people at that Christmas dinner on that Christmas lunch are now some of my best clients. So they've joined me, and now they're on their fifth, sixth property. So I'm really wrapped, and I've got cousins on the doing exactly what I'm doing too. So all they needed was, I think deep down I loved the idea of it, but they were probably a bit scared themselves. So they threw out the negatives of what they heard out there. But once I explained, well, why don't they have tenants? Well, they probably didn't buy in a hotspot. They were buying in areas where there was too many rentals. Maybe they overpaid for the property. There's a lot that goes into before buying the property. I call it the due diligence and the research.
Right.
There's a lot of work. And even you could say, Belinda, I've got the best property. I'm paying the best price for it. But if we crunch the numbers and it's not the right fit, forget it.
Absolutely.
So we've got to talk.
Yeah,
got to talk logically, not emotionally.
Because not every property is an investment grade property, right? So
Correct.
some might just, and so many people might argue that, I want to buy in a place where we can drive to, and if the toilet breaks, we can fix it, and things of that nature. And half of the time, where they are already situated is usually not a really good investment.
Correct. Buying in your own backyard doesn't guarantee it's going to be the right property, and it's going to be the right property that's going to get you the growth. And I've actually worked with a lot of people going, no, we want to drive past. I'm like, why? To check if the lawns have been mowed? It doesn't matter. The reality is, if you're an investor, you're going to make sure you've got someone that can introduce you to experts. At the end of the day, I've got properties all around Australia. I've probably only seen one or two of them. I've just got good property management that look after them. That's their job. That's what I pay them to do. So the reality is, I don't need to drive past them. The only thing I need to do is check my bank account.
Absolutely. See, you can't climb the ladder of success with your hands full. If you've got a lawnmower in your hand and you're trying to, get another property there, you pick your battles. But you've
Correct.
Done really well, and you've gone on and retired 700 plus people, and that's a very extraordinary number, knowing that not a lot of people go past the first or second property in Australia. So what does that actually look like in practice? How do you work with people until they retire?
So the whole idea is, I actually sit down with people and do a proper game plan, like a strategic game plan. And what we do is we sit down and work out what their big goals are. I can tell, I've heard a lot of goals, and I won't go through a lot of them, but I think the majority is, hey, Belinda, we just want to replace our income. That's all we want. That's probably a good 80% of people out there. Belinda, I just want to replace my income. And I'll turn around and go, great. When do you want to retire? Some people say 20 years, 10 years, 15, 7, 5. So then what I've got to do is work out, okay, you want to retire in the next 10 years. Let's work out a game plan and see how we can get to that figure. And the average kind of, retirement, like you're talking around $100,000 to $150,000 a year for getting out of bed. We call that passive income. So that's money you make after all expenses. What does that look like? And how do we get to that figure? So how do we get to that 150 in 10 years' time? Now, by the way, I've got other people that have retired on 200 or 300K. And again, little bit of a different strategy, but it's still the same concept. What do you want to create? Let's work out a game plan, and let's slowly reverse engineer and go step number 1. And once we do step number 1 and we achieve that, within about a year to a year and a half, we're talking about their next step. So it's not something that you do every day. It's set it up. And this is a very buy and hold mentality. So we're not buying properties and flipping. We're looking for the right properties in the right area at the right timing for the right price. And long game, it's actually going to be cash flow positive. So it's all about creating those good, strong steps, the foundations, really strong foundations, and building on top of it, because you can't have a rickety floor. You're going to fall through it. And that's where people have challenges, where they go out and buy properties and then they realize, wow, we can't handle these properties, and end up selling. So we've got to make sure that those foundations are really strong, and that's working through their, working with the right financial advisors, the right brokers, and making sure we get their ducks in a row and make sure they've got a really solid foundation and get them started on their first investment.
I like that.
Absolutely. And once we've done that, that's where a lot of the learning comes in, because they turn around and go, Belinda, this is awesome. When am I getting another one? And I go, well, look, we don't have to wait a little bit. Well, let's wait for the market. Let's wait. And then those properties, I've seen members make anywhere from 100, 200, even 250,000 of equity in 1 year. Can you imagine? For some people, that's their whole wage doubled in 1 year for just sitting on a piece of dirt. But also that's their leverage to start looking into another property later on down the track. And then we just rinse and repeat. If it worked the first time, we can make it work the second time. But again, it's ticking all the boxes and following the basic principles that we learnt the first property. And I'm happy to report, one thing I love about being a coach is my clients really listen, and they become easy to coach, because they are actually becoming A-grade investors, and they're also becoming street smart. So I'm teaching them life tools, and that's very important.
I like that. You know what I like about the goals approach is, you did mention you've got a Range Rover, right? If I say, Belinda, come and let's have coffee this side of town, you would put the address of where you're going, not the address of you in Port Melbourne. And
Correct.
So many people are just looking at where they are because they haven't got someone or people that can stretch them and work with them to show them what is actually possible. And I feel like they're missing out on that because they're just surrounding themselves, like you said earlier on, with a lot of naysayers, and that just works out like that. But there's one thing that I've noticed in Australia, Belinda, where a lot of people have that fear of the tall poppy syndrome. Can you maybe address that, especially when it then comes, it's enough to just have a family property and pretty much anything else is now a little bit, over, and there's always that, fear of what people would say. How would you address that?
Look, at the end of the day, I mean, investing in anything, I mean, it can be a personal thing, having a goal of wanting to make 100 grand a year. We've got to look in the future. We're not going to be making that 100 grand tomorrow. We're going to be making it. Now, you look at the value of 100 grand 20 years ago. That was a lot of money. Whereas you're looking at now, you look at the next generation of kids that are going to start getting into the market in 10 years. They're not going to look at a property less than $1 million, right? So the money with inflation, it's going up. So we've got to play it really smarter, not harder. And it's so important that we start thinking about our future, but we don't want to be obsessed with it. We just want those baby steps and slowly chip away at those goals. Because the reality is, expenses of life is going up. That's just the fact. I mean, I think everyone freaked out when we had the banana shortage, and bananas were like $4 each. And it was an outrage. It was an outrage. And then we didn't have eggs, and then eggs went through the roof, So the thing is, we're always going to have those challenges in life. Wouldn't it be great to think that you're making 100 grand just while you're sleeping? So I feel like the whole tall poppy syndrome, I think we're moving on as a society. I think we had a lot of that, but I think people now are becoming more exposed to opportunities out there and thinking, hey, 100 grand, that could be a couple of properties in the future to do this right. We don't have to go bragging and making other people bad, but what we've got to do is work more as a community and go, hey, I just did this. It really worked for me. Maybe it could work for you too. And I think that changes the mindset in people. Once they realize that, and look, we're in a country, we've got 1.7 million immigrants coming to Australia that need houses. The government was supposed to build nearly 1 million properties. They did nothing. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a rental crisis and a housing shortage. We need investors. There's opportunities out there. So the reality is you can kind of sit back and think, oh yeah, I'll just let that opportunity pass. Or when opportunity knocks, you can grab it with both hands and open up the door. And it's not always just going out and buying a property. It's just seeing what you've got in your ability to do. Have a look and see what is available before you go down that path. Because there's nothing worse when I meet clients and they go, Belinda, geez, I wish I met you 4 years ago. We could have done this 4 years ago, but we were too scared and we were told not to get involved in the market because we had a financial advisor that only sold shares and was against property. They could have had 4 or 5 properties under their belt. Now, I don't want to kind of say hindsight is a shame. It's a shame we didn't do it. But the reality is the fact that they're doing it now, but they held themselves back because they thought, maybe we shouldn't do it. I mean, you've just got to get out there and get educated. And if you're thinking about it, there's so many books out there, but you could read every single investment book and just get information. Paralysis? You read so much till you get to a point where you just blow yourself out and go, oh, it's too hard, basket. I've read so much, I'm confused now. So that's why it's really good to get a coach that really is laser beam, working on exactly what you want to create. And it's not always about money. It's about, hey, Belinda, I want to choose the schools for my kids. Hey, Belinda, I want to get us ahead. So when we get to 50, 60, we can choose a life on our terms. And this is so important. Most people might want to keep working, might want to go part-time, might want to retire, but at least you've got the options. Because the scariest thing I'm seeing is most people I meet have got probably only an average of maybe 200-300K of super. That's not going to go up a huge amount over the next 10 years. But we can use that money and invest in property. So super, there's opportunities for super, there's opportunities for equity. I helped a gentleman a few years ago. He joined up with zero deposit, but he had a couple of motorbikes, he had a couple of jet skis, he had a couple of cars. None of them, he just had all these toys. And he was working as FIFO.
Robert calls them doodads, yeah?
Yeah. So I said, guess what? Just pick out the basics, sell the rest. That guy's now on his third investment and probably making 200 cash a week positive. Was it worth it? I go, now you can go back and replace those toys because you're making good money now.
Great. So, Belinda, before people rush and go to some sort of jet ski warehouse to buy jet skis so they can sell them in the future.
No, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that.
I heard it on the podcast. I'll buy a lot of jet skis.
I want you to save your pennies, and as I said, there's a lot of opportunities out there, and I always say to people, you need to look at all your opportunities. Is equity a way to get started? Some clients come to me, they've got a little bit of cash and they've got a little bit of equity. We can put that together, right? If you're thinking about doing this, do whatever it takes, and you go to the end of the earth, because they're the people that get ahead in life, the people that get out there and at least try. As I said, there's toys. Some people have even sold a bit of their shares, bought property and bought their shares back.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I always say property. I haven't heard safe as Bitcoin. I haven't heard safe as shares, but I've definitely heard safe as houses.
Oh,
but
absolutely.
It's got to be done properly.
Great stuff. Now, with the everybody is going to need a house, and anybody sort of can invest if they apply themselves. Who do you absolutely love working with, and who gets the most value by working with you? In work that you
Absolutely.
do.
Yep. Look, there's two categories. The first one is the mums and dads with kids, two or three kids, or even one to three children. They're my favorite to work with because they're so humble. They don't think they can do anything. And once we sit down and show them a strategy, they actually turn to themselves. I've seen families in tears going, Belinda, we're going to be able to set up our kids with one property each over the next 10 years. I'm going, absolutely. But we need to look after you and get you up there first. Then you can help the children. So they're one. And the second one is first home buyers, because a lot get involved in first home buyers to become investors. So I've probably talked about nearly 47 people out of being a first home buyer, because the challenge is you have to live in it, you're under a budget, and the challenge is you're usually having to live out in the outskirts. So what I say is become a rent investor. Rent where you want to live and buy where you're going to make money. Because a lot of the cases, people get caught up in these first home buyers grants. You lose all your depreciation, you've got no tax deductions, you end up the house that you're living in, you don't want to live in, it's not your forever home, you're just trying to do it as a stepping stone. But the problem is, if you leave that house, you're not going to get the rent to cover your mortgage and you get stuck there. Brilliant scheme from the government. They're saving 80 grand and they're getting a house where you're going to live in for the rest of your life. Right. Whereas I say most of those first home buyers grants, they don't have the budget for their forever home, but now they're on their third, fourth property, making plenty of equity. Now they're pulling out money and buying $1 million house, and now they've got properties paying off their mortgage. What a better strategy. That's playing it smarter, not harder.
Absolutely. But Belinda, I mean, obviously, this came with time. It's not something that like we've
There's no
established.
such correct. No such thing as a get rich quick scheme. And if anyone tells you, you come and talk to me, I'll put them in line.
Don't worry, I've got a bridge to sell them if they believe that horse.
Correct.
So
you're right.
Where can people get started on their journey? In terms of maybe getting in touch with you and getting to learn a little bit more about what will
absolutely. I'd love to. Absolutely. Look, one thing I love, I give out free content. I love what I do. I coach for free. I'm an investor myself, so I am making money out of my properties. So I think that I've got a lot out of property, so I love to give back. I think that's also good karma as well. So there's a couple of ways. I'm doing a webinar on Wednesday night, which is around 6:45. That's on my website. The other option is if you want to book in for a one-on-one, I do a free session where I can sit down. You need to book in my diary, and we can either do a Zoom or we can do a telephone call, or even better, if they're in the area. I'm also out and about. Like I was out at Chelsea Heights and Mentone today, catching up with some of my clients and things like that. So I'm out on the road sometimes as well. Catch up for a coffee at your favorite coffee place and sit down. I'll bring my laptop and just show you some figures and work out what would be the best scenario and give you some food for thought to go away and just really process, take it all in, and then come back to me and go, Belinda, we're really excited. We love this concept. Let's get started. And then we can start them on the process. And then some people say, hey, look, my situation's changed. I'm moving overseas. So be it. But at least you've got that first step. And that's a 20-minute, half an hour strategy call with me. And that's all on my website as well.
Absolutely. I'll make sure that all those links are in the show notes below so that people can actually find their way to getting started with you. Now, you presented to us earlier that you were traveling all around Australia, and that was your Toyota days and things of that nature. If you knew what you now know about property, would you still be going to dealerships or would you be property finding?
Don't say that. Hindsight. I should have been investing. I mean, I mentioned it before we got started. I'm now working with families that have done so well with properties, and now we're helping the kids, and they're coming through. My youngest is 19. I'm working with a 20-year-old, a 21-year-old, and I'm sitting there going, "Oh my God, I wish I had a coach like me. I'm jealous." Um, yeah, to get back to your question, no, I would have invested earlier and started earlier. But look, as I said, you can't always go back in time, but what you can say is you did it when you did it and you started, and it doesn't matter when you get started, just get started.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, you can't go back in time, but there's one thing that you can do is set yourself up for the future. What's next,
Correct.
Belinda? What are you working on that we can be excited about that now that you've brought us into your world?
Well, I'm working on a couple of things at the moment. My webinars have just kind of started up again. So I had a bit of a break from them for a while, which I really love. Um, the other thing also is my partner and I have got a series of children's books in the pipeline. I can't tell you about them, but they're really exciting. And yes, they're about, money and children and things like that. So we've just started with all that. We've got a whole series. So again, it comes back to my values in regards to, education's the key. And I've just, my catchphrase, learning and start learning so you can start earning.
Mm, absolutely. I absolutely love that. And Belinda, I can't thank you enough for the time that we spent on the
Absolutely. It's
podcast.
been a pleasure. And hopefully everyone got a little bit of insight out there, because all it takes is, that one little first baby step, and that's all you need. And with the
Oh,
right people around you, and I also believe that activity breeds activity. So, you you find the right community, you find the right tribe. I think that's what we're lacking here. We need to find the right people to just guide us and get us in the right direction. Everybody wins.
don't you worry about the people listening to this, because they always have the best experts, the best people coming around their way. And thank you so much for sharing, first of all, your energy and then your life story and your experience. I've got so much value. Not a lot of people get to have conversations like this every single day. And you know what I mean? And this is what you do for your living.
Yep,
So it is an absolute pleasure to have, learned
absolutely. And
from
I'm
somebody like yourself.
Absolutely. I'm super grateful because, chatting to you is getting out to some extra people. And if we can just change one life, happy days. But I hope, there's more out there. But yeah, bring it on. Come and have a chat with me, have a coffee. I'm sure we'll bounce off and we'll have a great time. Absolutely.
Great stuff. People like you make my job very, very easy. I don't know about you, but I'm working right now. So
Hey, if you're doing what you enjoy, I'm the same as well. Talking to people when you love what you do, you're not working.
absolutely. What an inspiring conversation. I mean, Belinda has just shown us that property isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet, but it's also about creating freedom, choices, happiness, and a legacy that actually matters. And if you're serious about understanding how to take that very first step, I'm going to encourage you to jump onto the free live webinars in the links that I'm going to be putting on there. Belinda, as she has mentioned, is giving free value that you would not find at any barbecue out there. And I know a lot of Australians have the statement, she'll be all right, mate. No, she's not going to be all right, especially with the way things are happening in the world right now. I want you to remember one thing. Prosperity is about taking action, not just being inspired by people like Belinda and enjoying the energy that she's bringing to the table. So my challenge for you is just take one step from whatever we've mentioned and, just really, really, promise yourself that you're going to implement either signing up for the webinar or subscribing to the online prosperity show so that you don't miss out on any of these particular topics. So if you're subscribed, stay tuned. As the next episode, we're going to be talking about fresh ideas to help you live a happier existence. And while you're at it, share this with somebody who might be umming and ahhing about their future. Hey, Belinda has got some wise words for them. Now, I don't know what you're going to do with this information, but enjoy the rest of your day. Bye for now.